everyone, this is Yami, your Latina next door. Welcome back to my channel. A few days ago, I shared the image of this table that you see right here that I got for only $20 on a Facebook Marketplace. Now, I have been wanting a coffee bar for the longest time, and I thought $20 for an Ikea table like this was perfect for me to add my Coastal Farmhouse touch and customize it for my taste. If you're interested to see what I did and how I did it, please keep watching. Now, as you saw, the top was pretty damaged with water damage and just lots of use over the years. However, my husband and I had several 1x4s left over from a previous project that I thought would be perfect to add to this table. Now, the table had two lower shelves, but I only wanted to add wood to the top and the bottom. But we used the template from the middle shelf to mark and cut the wood to the appropriate sizes. Now, according to the Latino engineer, this is what you do when you don't have a pencil. Once the wood was cut, I used a jigsaw to notch out those corner pieces. Then I, along with the most hideous pair of leggings you can ever imagine, glued down those slats with some wood glue to the bottom shelf. Then I used our nail gun to hold them down. Then once the bottom shelf was done, we did the exact same process to the top of the table. So here's what the table looked like after the wood was installed. Now, since we were going for this coastal farmhouse look, my husband chose this beautiful Nantucket blue color by Folk Art. I used this chalk paint to paint all of the black that was exposed on this table, including the two drawers and the shelf. This chalk paint covers really well. If at any point in time the chalk paint became too thick on my brush, I would spray it down with a little bit of water, and it actually worked perfectly to get it nice and smooth on this surface. And of course, my oldest wanted to help out as well. I let that coat dry completely, and then I proceeded to give it a second coat. Now, I wanted this to look weathered, so after the second coat dried completely, I used a chip brush to dry brush some white chalk paint, also by Folk Art in the color White Adirondack. And this is really simple. All you have to do is add a little bit of paint onto like a paper plate, dip your brush, wipe some of the paint off, and then just use long strokes to add as much or as little white as you want. If you mess up and add too much, all you have to do is go back over it once it dries with the blue paint. This paint is really forgiving. Now, after I was happy with the dry brushing, I began to sand it down with a sanding block and started distressing it in the areas that would get the most distressing over time, like the corners and the legs. I even did a little bit of distressing along the borders and the shelves as well. Then it was time to stain the wood, and I actually used Home Decor's wood tint in the color Walnut. Now, I was super pleased with this product. It was my first time using it, and I cannot say enough good things about it. First off, this is a water-based, so cleanup is much easier than using an oil-based stain. Second of all, it has barely no odor. I can use this inside my house during the cold seasons with no problem. Also, it doesn't have that oil in it, so it doesn't feel greasy when you touch it like you do an oil-based stain, and it dries pretty quickly. You can see it was very easy to put on with a foam brush. And since the color is actually really rich with just one coat, I didn't have to add any other coats or wipe off any extras. It was the perfect amount for the first application. Once it was completely dry, it was time to add the clear wax. I also used Folk Art's clear wax for this, and I used it for both the wood and the painted portion of the table. Now, you're supposed to brush it on, let it sit for 24 hours overnight, and then buff it off. Now, one thing I did notice, since this is a liquid form of wax, as I was brushing it on, some areas would get a little bit thicker or clump up a little bit. Now, if you find that it's doing that, make sure that you wipe it off before you let it sit overnight, because if you decide to buff it the next day, it will be a little bit harder to remove. Other than that, it works perfectly fine. That's just a little something I learned from working with this wax that I thought I would share. Now just make sure you use a lint-free cloth to buff it, and then after that's done, make sure you give it about a week before you give it any heavy usage. And this is how she turned out in the end. I think she is absolutely beautiful. Of course, I still have to add some touches here and there, a little bit of decor, and possibly a shelf above the table. But I am enjoying this beautiful table that only cost me $20 from a Facebook ad. I love how that stain turned out, and I also really like how we ended up choosing a color for this table instead of just going neutral like white, brown, or gray. I think it adds a little nice pop of color, but since there's gray in the paint, it's not overpowering. Please make sure to give this video a thumbs up if you enjoyed this transformation, and if you have not yet subscribed, make sure you do so you can check out how I decorate this coffee bar. Alright, I will see you guys in the next video. Until then, adios!